This is the 1480 WSAR Newsroom at Noon with Alan Zarek.
Lots of things to do, including discussions about Swansea's town meeting tonight, the future of the Fall River Diocese as it relates to the St. Anne's Church and its closing in November. We'll also hear from City Council Vice President, City Council President Cliff Ponte, and one of the fathers of the new Fall River City Charter, Mike Miozza, on this clause that suddenly everybody that can find the charter takes a look at and how it relates to tomorrow night. WSAR Newsroom conversations with the chair of the Charter Commission, Mike Miozza, and with Fall River City Council President Cliff Ponte on Section 3-8, and what comes down to basically a portion of one sentence as we go into tomorrow night's special Fall River City Council meeting. We'll do that on the other side as we continue on WSAR.
This is the WSAR Newsroom, right here on 1480 WSAR.
And as we continue on WSAR, we had this discussion last night with Mike Miozza, who was the chair of the Charter Commission when it was being recast. There is a section now that will be debated, perhaps voted on tomorrow night as a means to perhaps remove embattled Fall River Mayor Jasiel Correia II. We talked to Mr. Miozza first, then Cliff Ponte immediately following as we continue in this second half hour of the WSAR Newsroom. As we continue on this edition of the WSAR Newsroom with Mike Miozza, who was the chair of the commission that recast Fall River's city charter, which voters approved in the last municipal election cycle. All eyes are going to be really on what would appear to be one sentence of Section 3-8, temporary absence of the mayor. Section A, whenever by reason of sickness or other cause the mayor is unable to perform the duties of the office, the president of the city council shall be the acting mayor unless the president of the city council is unable or unwilling to serve. Now, it would seem like everything that is going to happen on Tuesday night is going to come down to three words, and that's or other cause. Is this other cause that we're talking about, the indictment that came down last week, is that applicable in this instance?
I would say no, and I would say the title of the section, Alan, is really what's in question. The section title is temporary absence of the mayor, and the mayor, I would argue, is not absent. And I would also, tell the listening audience that when this provision was put in, the intent of this provision was if the mayor became incapacitated for, sickness or some other cause and was unable to perform the duties of the office, that there was a procedure in place to keep government going. In my view, this section was not put in to remove a mayor from performing the duties of their office, that the only way in the charter that would allow that to happen is through the recall provision.
So if council tries this, are they looking at a court battle, I guess in one of the lower courts at some point, and maybe perhaps before the Supreme Judicial Court, if it were to get to there? Would the mayor have reason to challenge this and maybe get a temporary injunction?
I mean, I'm not a legal expert. I'm not an attorney, but to answer your question, I believe so. I think that may be a basis to do that because, again, I went back actually, Alan, and listened to the recording of this section when we debated it, and it's clear to me now as it was back then that this was intended. This provision was intended not to be able to remove the mayor. But only in the event that the mayor got into some type of serious accident, a heart attack, had some stroke, that the government could keep moving and working.
Now, the recall provisions that are in the charter right now, is there any big difference between what was available in the original charter versus now?
No, not at all. We adopted the language that was in the special act that was created some years ago We had a lot of debate on how we were going to handle that, and ultimately we decided that the recall was successful, and we simply adopted almost the exact same language. There was a couple of things that had changed in state law in terms of the number of days you had to do certain things, so we had to change that. But the recall provision is exactly as it was with the special act that was used a couple of years ago.
I've got another question, too, and I don't know if you can answer it, but just looking at this, let's say the mayor is temporarily removed through this provision that somehow or some way this is found to be viable. Would we be paying the mayor to basically sit out, work on his defense, and then would we be paying a council salary, or would we be paying a second mayoral salary to an acting mayor?
That's a good question, Alan. And again, I don't believe this particular provision is applicable because here's what I see happening. You have a sitting mayor right now who believes this probably is not applicable, and then we have a city council vote that may say they're going to remove him, and we're going to have two mayors show up on Wednesday morning to go to work, and I just think that throws the city in chaos. So I'm sure Corporation Council is looking at this. Now, whether the city council, depending on what his decision is, if he supports what the intention of this section was, then I don't know if the council will have any legal standing. They still may take a vote. But to me, this could end up getting chaotic. And there's a lot of questions that come up, just like you said. Now we have an opening on the city council. Does that get filled? So there's a lot of questions that will come out of this if that were to happen.
Appreciate your time as always, sir, and we certainly live in interesting times. Thank you.
We do, sir. So thank you for having me on, Alan.